Good evening, family.
Good
The
evening.
blessings of the Lord be upon you, each of you. I
Amen.
can do anything. You
Yes,
can do anything.
yes.
Can do anything
Yeah.
through Christ. And we give him thanks. Last week we started series, 3 weeks, at protecting our children. Last week we looked at the value of children and we took our text from Matthew chapter 18 and 1 to 10. Mr. Fee, you're going to help me with that? This evening, we're looking at, as we said last week, the characteristics and needs of the adolescent. Family Month, and we want to, as we say, focus on the children. Question is, who is an adolescent? And according to what I'm going to give you some general ideas, and then I'm going to be focusing on David, an adolescent in the Bible. So we will get to that in a little while. Now, some of what I'm saying just now might be things you know already, but it's always good to remind us of things we know that we will use them to our benefit and the benefit of our children. So, who is an adolescent? And according to the World Health Organization, that's what we refer to as WHO, and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, change please. An adolescent is anyone between ages 10 and 19. We always think of adolescent as teenagers, but it's ages 10 to 19. Of course, the 10, 11 are the early stages, which we probably refer to mostly as puberty. But adolescence is a period between childhood and adulthood. That is when we're seeing some changes, a period when there are emotional highs and lows, and that will increase. You know, you get moody and whatever. And it's important for adults to recognize that moodiness, for example, is a normal aspect of early adolescence. It's a part of the growing up time. All right? So that's for the adolescent, who he is, who she is. But there are, if you didn't know, there are a number of adolescents that are mentioned in the Bible. Esther was an adolescent. Esther, in the Jewish tradition, girls got married as early as 12. It is said that Esther was probably about 14 years old when she got married and became a queen. And then the mother of Jesus was also an adolescent. Miriam, the sister of Moses, was an adolescent. Samuel, Hannah's son, when he started working in the temple, serving in the temple, he was also a young child. Joseph, of course, when he was taken away, remember he used to wear his little coat of many colors. He was also an adolescent. Jeremiah was also an adolescent when he was working with the king as a king's cupbearer. And Timothy, we often heard about Timothy because we have read the book of Timothy. And then David was also an adolescent. So there are, and there are many more, but those are just a few of the ones I'll bring to your attention. So when next you read the Bible and you see those names, don't just think of them as big men, senior men, but in some instances you will see them first as young children, as adolescents, until they grow up. What are the characteristics of the adolescent? What we find is that there are biological changes, biological growth and development. And those of us who have children or grandchildren, and you yourself would remember your years of growing up, that there was a point at which there were certain changes that took place. There were physical changes in your body. And I won't go through the changes now because we know those changes. And the developmental stages start where you grow out your clothes, and sometimes, especially during the summer holidays when you're ready to go back to school in September, your uniform can't fit and they have to get new uniform and all that kind of thing. So there are biological changes and growth, emotional included in that. And there's social and psychological changes that take place. As little children, you'd be at home, but as you get older, you want to be out socializing. You want to get to know other persons. You want to have friends and so on. And then you start thinking differently. Your thinking, your reasoning is developing. You'll notice that years ago they had taken out the whole matter of mental ability and reasoning out of the exit exam for primary school into high school. They have put that back because it is so important that we develop reasoning skills to come to decision, to make relevant decisions and reason things out before we make those major decisions. And then there's moral development, and you say moral with all the bad things that some of our children go through. Remember that generally there is that. There are those who have deviated from this process, but basically there's moral development. They know the difference between right and wrong, even though they know the wrong, but they still do it. But they know the difference, the difference because they are developing. Then there's emotional and physical separation from parents. The later stage of adolescence is when some of our children may leave home to go to college, to go to university, or they might just leave home to go live wherever they want to live. They want to be freed from the observing eyes of parents. And even those who are at home, sometimes they're still separated because there's no real relationship with them and their parents. You'll realize, I don't know if you did it, but there are some children when the parents are invited to come to school for consultation day, they are very careful to tell their mother in particular what to wear, how our hair must be fixed and so on, because don't want other children to look at them to say, look at their mother. They want the best. So they are physically separated until you can fix up yourself well to some extent, you know. They separate themselves because now they are becoming aware of who they are, coming into their own. And sometimes we get upset about that, but if we understand that it's a stage and a phase, then we won't get that this upset. Then there's increased decision making. They want now to make their own decision and want to choose their what clothes they wear, what designer items they must get, and so on and so forth. Even when parents can't afford it, they put on that kind of pressure because they want to feel a part of the group. And then there's also increased pressure that they place on themselves. Some children are overachievers and they want the best, so they will pressure themselves into doing extra, additional. All when they're tired, they might just be pushing themselves because they want to excel. But there are some who are influenced by their peers, and so whatever the peers say, they will go along. And there's undefined status, you know, who am I? Where am I? You know, what how do people see me? Are some of the things that might come to their minds. And then there within that, there's a search for self. And we often hear about identity versus identity crisis. And in one psychologist, Eric Erickson, put that forward, where in the adolescent years, they go through this identity issue. Am I a fish? Am I a fowl? Who am I really? And that is when some of them are so shy, they keep themselves away, they're afraid, they look at their bodies and they're not happy with who they are because they don't look like others and so on. There's an identity situation. And then, of course, the crisis comes when they have some things in their minds to do and they are pressured by parents to do other things, like choosing a career and so on. They know what they want, but parents are pressuring them. And until are able to come to an agreement where the child is able to say, yes, this is what I want, there's going to be a crisis because the children are not just going to sit down and take what is being handed down to them. They want to make their own decision. come with their characteristics. Therefore, they have some needs. The adolescents do have needs. They need to belong. And that is why so many of our young men get into gangs, because they want to belong. And in the gang, they are recognized. As a matter of fact, some of them who go and shoot somebody or whatever, take a life, is part of the initiation into this group. Because if they do that, they feel belonged. They feel that they have achieved something. So the feeling of belonging is important. Of course, if home is happy, if home is what they desire in terms of the relationships at home, they can have parents or older brothers and sisters that they can relate to, they can talk with, and they feel that sense of belonging at home. It does help. Church and Sunday school and youth fellowship also help because they feel that they are one of the group and they feel belonged. This is where I can go and I feel comfortable, I feel safe. So there's need for belonging, there's need for enjoyment. And that is why many of our youngsters want to go into parties and so on. And why some of them are now so distressed because they are unable, because of the COVID situation, to go anywhere or to go to places that they want to. And that is why the government is having challenges, or the police, the security forces are having problem, because they are going anywhere they can find a hideout spot to have their parties, to socialize, because this is something that they need, something that they desire, and they do not know how not to, right? And then there is a need for independence. They want to be able to make choices, to make decisions, to do things without parents dictating or telling them what to do, especially if there is not a good working relationship with parents and other caregivers. They want to feel independent. Remember now, it's a stage between childhood and adulthood. So they feel that they are growing up, they are getting to be bigger and whatever. They want to make their decisions on their own, where to go to school, where to go to university or college, and what course to do, that kind of thing. They want the freedom to make personal choices and decisions. They want to be able to make decisions and choices for themselves. When they were younger, parents would be selecting their clothes, buying their clothes, telling them what to eat, making them know when they must go bathe, and all of those things. Now they want to make their own choices and decisions. And then there is a need for adventure. And our young people, many of them are risk takers because they feel that they are invincible. Nothing can harm them. And so when parents are trying to say, it is too late to go out, and if you go, you should be back by 10 o'clock. And of course, if it's a party, they're going to say 10 o'clock. Do you know what times party start? That kind of adventure. They want new things. They want to push the limit, to go beyond, to do what others think they cannot do. The risk taker, that is part of their needs. And there's a need for friends. And some of them are not discriminatory. Anybody they will choose for friends. And of course, parents need to be guided. But next week we will talk about how we're going to protect them. But they need friends. And yes, our children need friends. But parents have to be a part of helping them to choose wisely. They need to be understood, to be listened to be understood. And one of the things that turns a youngster off, an adolescent off, is when they're trying to explain themselves and parents butting in, shutting them down, and telling them they lie and that kind of thing. They want to be listened to. And even if they're talking foolishness, they still need to be listened to. As a matter of fact, they don't think that they ever talk foolishness because they have more sense than adults, they think. Right? So. They need to be understood and listened to. There's a need for security. So they want to know that they have a place to come to, no matter where they go. They must have this place of security, financial security. Parents can provide for them. Shelter, clothes, all of those things. Pay for them to go to school, security. They want that. And they want sexual satisfaction. And this is a big one. And sometimes the things that our youngsters get into, parents would be appalled, but they don't know, right? But then again, it depends on how the growing up, the training, the counseling, the guidance has been at home to help them to make meaningful and right choices and decisions. And then there is the need for power. I don't know if you've ever seen a youngster who just got a license, car license, motor vehicle license, and you see them jump in the car and them take off and leave all the dust behind them. Because behind the wheel, there is power. You watch them on the motorcycle, the motorbikes, and how they operate. And even before the motorbike, you see the power even on the bicycle. When they're in the road and doing what they call the wheelie, and they're riding on the one wheel of the two-wheel bicycle, because a bicycle is two-wheel, and they're on one wheel. It's part of the power to show how great and powerful and able they are. Again, part of their developmental stage. So basically, that was what I just shared tonight with the adolescent. And I want for us now, as I go through looking at the lessons from the life of David, if those of you who have adolescents, those of you who have been adolescents, if you can look back and see anything in your life that matched up with what I just said in terms of who the adolescent is, their needs, and their characteristics. Okay? So we look now at lessons from the life of David. And earlier, Marcia read for us and came on screen 1 Samuel 16:11-13. And I want you to come with me because I'm going to go fairly quickly because I don't want to take up a lot of time. At the same time, I want for us to get some of these lessons because we're going to, as it were, match them with our day-to-day or everyday adolescent now. And we see in that portion God's chosen. And God's chosen was David. And David was anointed king by Samuel. You will recall that Samuel came to Jesse's house and asked to see his son because he was sent to find a king, as it were, in Jesse's family among his sons. But each one that came, God spoke to Samuel, no, not that one. And when he had gone through all the sons, he asked Jesse, are there any other? And Jesse said, yes, but he's out in the field taking care of the sheep. And Jesse could have said, no, I won't send for him because he's the youngest. But Jesse sent for him. And so Jesse released David to Samuel to be anointed king. And many of us as parents, we have our children locked. We will not release them to be who God wants them to be. As a matter of fact, there are some parents who will tell their children, you're not ready to be baptized yet. Now you're still young, wait. And that is one of the things that turns some of our children away completely. You know, once you tell them wait at that early stage when they are pliable and when they will acknowledge Christ as way that time, later on in their adolescent years, it will be the hardest thing to get them to return. So let us deliver, let us give up like Hannah. Hannah really wanted this child to open her barren womb. And imagine she got the son she asked for back to God for service. This is what I'm saying to all of us. Let us be willing to give our sons back, our children back to God for service. Hold 1 second, my internet. Okay, thank you. So Jesse released David to Samuel. Okay, this is David. You know, he's out in the field. Take over. All right. Now we move quickly to 1 Samuel 17:15-47. And I'm not going to do every single verse, but there are some very important nuggets, some lessons that we can take from David that we're going to. David chose to take care of his father's sheep, while the elder brothers chose to go to fight against the Philistines. David made a personal choice. He could have gone with his brothers, but he chose And it's not Jesse that said, no, you have to stay. No, he chose to go take care of the sheep while the brothers, even though he liked adventure, right now, he believed that he should be with the sheep, taking care of them. Personal choice. Okay? And then verse 28, when David turned up, his father had sent him to take things to the brothers. And when David turned up and his elder brother saw him, he reprimanded him. Where have you left the few sheep, your father's sheep? Why are you here? I know you have a wicked heart. Yeah? You're just nosy enough. You know, his brother started at him. But look what, David was not discouraged. Although his brother was doing all of that to him, he was not discouraged. He had come and he was going to be nosy. And it didn't matter to him what his brother said. Right? David was reprimanded, but he was not discouraged by his brother because David was a confident young man. And look at the young people around us. Are you seeing some confident? Even if they're doing something that is negative, they are confident that they can do it. You know, they're going to do it anyway, right? So David was. But when his brother reprimanded him, David issued a rhetorical question. David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? And I think that was a brilliant question for a young man to ask the warriors, the ones who were there, you know, to fight against Goliath. But David's response, what have I done now? What you going on like that? What have I done? Is there not a cause? David saw, I believe, what the brothers and the other Israelites did not see, right? He saw a cause. This big, long 9 feet plus man was defying, being disrespectful to the God that they worship, the God of Israel. And so David was annoyed. Is there not a cause? And then verse 30, David persisted. You can go and talk in his mind. He never said that to him, but I imagine he said, you can talk. I am determined to defend this cause because I know what this God has done for me and what he can do for us. So keep going, but he persisted. He was determined. And yes, sometimes we see this in our youngsters. We give them a task to do, and they sit down and they won't do it, and you keep at them, and they sit down same way, determined. Just give me a chance, let me do it in my time, more or less. That's what they're saying. But as parents, we don't want it that way. His mind was made up. Israel's men were fearful, but David made up his mind. David was confident he could do. And then come now, King Saul. And he said, but you're just a boy. You're just a youth. You can't go against that great fighter, that great warrior. He will tear you to pieces. Hallelujah. And verses, David presented past victories for present problems. Here was a present problem. Goliath was coming against them. They ran away. Nobody wanted to go. And David, when Saul came, David said, I am a boy, yes, but guess what? I have some victories that you don't know about. I was out in the field looking after my sheep. The lion came, the bear came and grabbed up my sheep. And God gave me the strength to tear the lion and to tear the bear to bits. I want to tell you that sometimes in our children's lives, we see them as if we want to tear them to bits. Us, right? But remember that you are stewards of these children. So David is saying, I have past victories and I hold on to those victories because it was my strength, but it was God's strength. And I'm using those victories, those past victories now for present problem. And the problem with which we are faced is that Goliath is being feisty, rude, disrespectful to our God. And we're going to put him in his place. And if you won't do it, I know that my God will do it through me. This is a young man. This is a young boy. You know, David was a shepherd boy, a young man, an adolescent. And here he is now standing up for God. And sometimes we say our young people, they don't care about God. They're not committed. Them say them a Christian, but they're not committed. Who are we to judge? We are there just to encourage and support them and to help them. All right? And again, it goes back to home. What lessons were taught at home? How much time was spent talking to them about God and what God can do from they were young, from the set we spoke about last week? How often did you read the Bible to them? How often did you tell them the stories? How often did you show them God's goodness? David was able to do that now because he had past victories. Verses 37 to 39 tells us of David's confidence in God and not in King Saul's armor. You will recall that King Saul took up his armor, dressed up David, and poor little David could not move because these things were so heavy. And David, his confidence was in God, not in Saul's armor, not in his helmet, not in his shield, not in his sword. His confidence was in God. And so he put them aside. And as he put them aside, David knew what he was going to do. He had proven weapons. Proven weapons. He had his sling. In Jamaica, we call it slingshot. And those of you who grew up in the 50s, 60s, if you are here, you will know what slingshot is. Those of you who are from the rural area, you know what slingshot is. You just put the stone in the thing and you just fire it. And David took up his stones, nice smooth stones, and his sling, because these were weapons that he was accustomed to. And so he was not discouraged by how other people viewed him. He was not discouraged by how King Saul saw him. He was not discouraged by how his brother saw him. David was encouraged in God because he knew what God could do in him, through him, and for him. So David decided, I am going to go and do what God would have me do. Verse 39 also, the last part, David's personal choice and decision to use proven weapons. That was his choice. Saul was giving him what he thought would be good for battle, would be good to face Goliath. And this is what we do sometimes with our children. We tell them, we show them what they have to do. Even if they have another way of doing it that might be helpful, we want them to do it our way. And I'm not here saying that we must not guide them and help them, but sometimes we have to give them a chance to make some choices. They can work that out. Don't just take everything from them. Personal choice, decision to use proven weapons, his sling and the stones. That's what he knew, that's what he was accustomed to, and that's what he was going to use. So David was not deterred, he was not turned off, he was not discouraged when he stood before 9 feet, 9.25 feet Goliath. The Goliath is a tall giant. And picture it, picture this tall giant and this little boy down there looking up at him. And he, look here, what is this before me? This is an embarrassment to me. This little nothing coming to fight me. But David was not deterred. David was not thrown off. Though David stood before Goliath, took his foot down, took his threat of destruction, took his out of despising him. David said, it's all right. Verse 43, David's confidence in God, his bravery as a risk taker, his determined spirit, his sense of call. There's a cause, and I'm called to this cause. In defense of the name of God, he pushed forward and secured victory for Israel. David did that. This young adolescent, this young boy, defeat the 9.25 feet Goliath, this giant. Did he do it in his own strength? No. He had a confidence, an abiding confidence in Almighty God. And he knew that the God who helped him out there with his sheep was able to help him here also. The thing I want to ask us, do you see in David some of those things that we have talked about in terms of what the adolescent need? What are the characteristics of the adolescent? Do you see power in David? Do you see independence in David? Do you see his need for adventure? Yes, man, him come and him, everybody running from this big giant. Look at David said, I can't go and run. I'm not running from him because him come with sword and shield, but I come in the name of the Lord of hosts who is defiant. I am going to fix him business good and proper with God. He had a freedom to choose the armor that he wanted, choose the weapon that he wanted, willing to take risk. We see David doing. And I want to tell you that our adolescents will do many things if we give them the chance. All they need is for us to be there to guide them, give them the freedom. Sometimes they will seek help, even though they may not seek your help, but they will seek help to do what they have to do. And so I say to us tonight, to protect our children, to protect our adolescents, we need to understand their stages of development. You cannot treat the 14-year-old as you would treat the 5 and the 4. You can't speak with them that way. So as they develop, as they grow, you're going to treat them age appropriately. Whatever you give to them is going to be appropriate to their age. And that is why sometimes I get a little off when I see 5-year-old parents and giving them some hairstyle that is straining their necks. We need to treat our children age appropriately and help them to grow up. If we understand their stage of development or their stages of development, we will work with those stages and to see when they're behaving a particular way is because of the stage they're at. And we can't go into those stages tonight. You have to do it in other forum, but not necessarily in this one. We have to understand the changes they're experiencing, even when they're going through physical changes. And the limbs of the boys are long, the hands are long. So everything them knock off and bounce into an accident. So they're washing dishes. And the dish that your grandmother did give you from way back when, they break it. They get all upset with them and they have to buy it back. They can't find it because it was bought in your grandmother's day. So you have to know, right? So we have to try and understand that it's not deliberate, but it's an accident. And we just have to help them to see how best they can manage that. We need to know the needs they have. And we talked earlier about the needs for the belonging, the need to be listened to, the need to be heard. We need to listen to them, to hear what they are saying and sometimes what they are not saying. Because if you're really tuned in to when they're talking with you and you're allowing them to talk, you will recognize that there are some things that are not coming out and how you need to help them. We need to give them guidance. It's not dictating, but guiding. Sit down and talk with them and guiding. There's some of us who look back in our years of raising our children and we say some of the things we know now, if we knew those things then, chances are our children will turn out even better than they have now, right? But we need to give guidance. And please bear in mind that this is not only for your children and grandchildren, but all the children who come in your sphere of operation. Those of you who teach school, teach Sunday school, have neighbors with children, we can help to raise them. Gone are the days when we focus on the maxim that it takes a village to raise a child. Now the village is disappearing, as it were. We are all about our own business and not caring about others. We need to encourage our children and not threaten them. They don't pass the exam, what you're not going to do and what. Don't threaten, encourage. The song we had just before I started, you can, I can help them to understand that whatever it is, God can help them. We need to understand them. It takes time, but we have to sit down and talk with them and understand what they're saying, what they're not saying, what they're going through, what they're expecting. Let's understand. Listen. Many of us parents are not good listeners because we want to preach at them and dictate to them all the way down. So we don't listen. Let's give them our ears and our heart and our eyes when we listen, because we listen with three main parts of our bodies: our eyes, our ears, and our heart. Let's give it to them. And we need to correct them because, yes, they go off course sometimes. As we listen, we need to be able to correct them. When they do something that we don't approve of, we need to correct them, but correct in love and correct them so they know what we are correcting them for. Not just to cuss, but we say so. Let them know exactly what we are saying. And as I close, I want to say to us also that with all of that, sometimes our personal experience is very helpful for your children in making some of the decisions they make. Sometimes we keep our life situation from them because we don't want them to know what we went through. But those of us who went through hardships, we need to tell them. It will help them in making decisions. It will help them to be probably more thoughtful of when you say, I do not have money to buy that particular designer item. All we have is to get the grocery. I don't have any more money. But we tend to hide behind our own situation and they don't know what has happened to us. I believe really, if some of our children knew the challenges or know the challenges that their parents have experienced or are experiencing, I think some of the difficulties that we have with them would be lessened, would be alleviated. Our adolescents are still our children, and we need to protect them. And we protect them by understanding them, listening to them, hearing what they have to say, know their needs, know their challenges, and be better able to guide them. God bless you. Next week, we will look at how we will protect our children. Blessings.